Welcome back to my channel, Star Booze.
Expanding like a rural highway. John Denver served for 25 years as Arcust's golden boy. Then they abandoned him as if he had no meaning. His former spouses had revealed his ferocious rage and chainsaw outbursts. His drinking had even cost him his license to fly. By 1997 he was no longer able to fly legally, yet he continued to rise. But there was a deadly defect in the plane that killed him. When detectives eventually put things together, they discovered something darker together. The collision may have been avoided. The caution there were signs everywhere, but no one listened. What actually took place that day will surprise you. John Denver was born as Ian December Henry John Deutschendorf Jr., March 31, 1943. His birthplace was Roswell, New Mexico, into a flying-loving family. Captain Henry Dutch, his father Senior Deutschendorf, was a well-known air. 3-speed records were set by the force pilot. In the Hustler bomber B-58. Dutch was a hero in the armed forces and even admitted into the Hall of Fame of the Air Force. Notoriety for Little John. However, life was unstable. Growing up in the military required relocation. Constantly. He was an Arizona resident. Texas and Alabama seldom remained long enough to form true friendships. Each and every time as he started to feel at ease, it was time to pack things and leave again. This left him feeling isolated and out of place in Iblis. The feeling that you don't have his genuine home never left him. When John, who was 11 years old, lived in the gift from his grandmother in Tucson, Arizona, a very special gift for him. It was an ancient. The Gibson guitar was manufactured in 1910, hence it older than 40 years. For a young man who felt displaced for the majority of his life, that the guitar became a constant and actual. He was able to express himself through music. He was unable to articulate it. The sound of he felt reassured by its strings. He also started singing with the boys from Tucson, Arizona. He learned to harmonize in the chorus. And onto the stage. Participating in this renowned group provided him a feeling of belonging that was never possible at school. He was already playing folk music in high school. Songs in modest performances. Music was evolving into more than a pastime. It was his method of figuring out his life. His dad was an inflexible man, and their bond was frequently tense. Dutch anticipated that his son would be the best at everything. John was kinder. And had aspirations to compose music, but they did have a common love, flying. When John went on to become a pilot, they drew closer at last. Flying together was a means of their bonding, even though it was dangerous as well. John would be haunted by that risk. Later in life, particularly following his own deadly aircraft accident in 1997. Nevertheless, that relationship persisted. Him appearing in his songs regarding liberty and boundless skies. Following, John enrolled in Texas Tech for high school. Architecture at a university. However, drawing blueprints wasn't his passion. He secretly desired to become a musician. Thus, after quitting school, he relocated to Los Angeles. At this point, he made the decision to take a new surname. Denver was his choice after the capital of Colorado due to the state was influenced by rivers and mountains. It felt like a new beginning. In 1965, he received a big break. Of the 250 vocalists who he was chosen to be the lead after auditioning, the Chad Mitchell Trio singer. This was his first significant musical opportunity. The world that exposed him to fresh people nationwide and provided the experience he required to develop. He stayed with the organization for 2 years and produced 3 albums. On the stage, he learned to sing confidently. He worked on composing his own offstage tunes. It was difficult to tour, but John so could every. He was gradually discovering his voice. Among the most well-known tunes he wrote when departing on a trip, Jet Aircraft, Mary Paul, and Peter recorded it in 1967, and it became popular by 1969 at the top of the Billboard rankings. All of a sudden, they were singing his. Despite not yet being a big single star, this achievement demonstrated that his songwriting was important. As soon as the Mitchell John didn't turn around, as the trio concluded, he was already making its way up the rankings on his own. Early in the 1970s, he was scoring hits one after the other. That seamless transition between solo and ensemble singer the star was uncommon. However, John made it appear. The career of John Denver launched in 1971 when his poems Prayers, the breakthrough album, and Assurances Take Me as the most notable song. Country Roads Home hardly ever became a well-known anthem. Earlier versions had sound issues, and briefly, the song appeared to be in danger of failing. However, Jerry Winrobe, the new manager of Denver, had alternative plans. He really pushed the music. Denver-based radio stations, Colorado, first published on April 12, 1971. It took several months to become popular. By on August 28, it reached the number on the Billboard Hot 100. Number 2. It was sold. Went platinum and sold over 1 million copies. In the same month. Over time, it continued to grow. It sold more by 2017.150000 digital copies in the America. It even had an impact on the state. West Virginia, where it was accepted as in 2014's official state anthem. In 1972, Rocky Mountain was the next stop for Denver. elevated September of that year saw the release of It Was his debut album and 6th overall. Make it to the US top 10, it reached its highest point at number that Billboard 200 has for. The heading became one of Denver's most well-known songs. Songs making it to the Billboard Hot 1,001,973's top 10. It came in at number 29. On the year-end chart and continues to enjoy popularity outdoor enthusiasts. The cover was captured at Aspen's Slaughterhouse Falls, Colorado, adding a personal touch. In 2007, decades later, Rocky Mountain High became a part of Colorado's two state songs that are officially recognized. The year 1974 and 1975 were the years that John Denver was prosperous. After only 18 months, he scored for Billboard #1 hits the Hot 100. The Sun Shone on My Shoulders. #1 in March of 1974. Then Song of Annie, July 1974. Thank God. Amen May. A Country Boy was the #1 song, 1975. And I Apologize came next in September of 1975. These hits demonstrated each and every aspect of his skill. Some were kind and optimistic, similar to Sunshine on My Shoulders. Thank God I'm a Country Boy. Say others were vivacious. Arnie's tuna composed for his wife in 10 minutes didn't become a wedding song classic. Denver was now broadcast on radio everywhere, on TV and in millions of people's live spaces. Throughout this heyday, Denver released 3 albums as well, all of which went over the top. The Best of John Denver Songs of 1973 was so popular that they became the best-selling album ever recorded by RCA. Despite passing Elvis Presley in sales, Returning Home followed once again in 1974 and triple platinum in the United States. Windong emerged and went double platinum together in 1975. These 3 records attested to Denver was a real star. By the conclusion of his, Denver has produced about 300 over his career tunes. He penned over 200 of them himself. He received a total of 12 gold medals for albums with platinum status. Global sales exceeded 33 million units. That caused him to among the most popular singers-composers from the 1970s. The work of John Denver leap into Hollywood was just as unexpected as it worked. He starred in 1977. George Burns, the comedic icon, in the popular film Oh God. Denver had never acted previously, but his laid-back Charismont audiences were drawn over by genuineness. Carl Reiner directed it, and it was based on Avery Corn's book. The movie depicted an ordinary supermarket manager's narrative as selected by God to propagate a divine message. Denver's performance seemed authentic and natural, which makes it simple to have faith in his character. The movie turned into enormous success, bringing in more over $51 million in the United States, and even winning an Oscar nomination for the screenplay, even if he didn't show up in the follow-ups. This initial position demonstrated Denver the ability to do more than just sing, solidifying him as an uncommon musician who transitioned into acting without a pause. Denver as well developed a look that people adored all through the 1970s. His long blonde hair, spectacles with wire rims, and Western shirts with embroidery became his trademark. The creator of these shirts was Denver met Anna Zapp at an art fair. In Aspen, her vibrant, handcrafted designs complemented his kind, grounded demeanor. Other celebrities such as Willie Nelson and Lita Bonnie Rao would don her clothes as well. Denver had a kind, inviting appearance, and simple to identify. It was really distinct from the more boisterous forms of different entertainers and came to represent straightforward, sincere nature of people and the times country music. Additionally, has successfully won over fans outside of Fiven. While some detractors weren't in the USEs, Jerry, his manager Winninrob, believed it was crucial for Denver will establish a direct connection with global supporters. Thus, in spite of some doubts, Winrob established a number of television programs aimed for British audiences. According to Winrob, the criticisms were intending to turn Denver into a household name so they'd go directly to the people. The strap flawlessly. Denver's cozy, charmed with a clear voice and a warm manner, British viewers, and established a devoted fan base throughout Europe. The exclusive offers demonstrate how effective television was. Method of introducing new performers abroad and contributed to Denver's international fame. Denver also had strong ties to Colorado. Following his relocation to Aspen, he accepted the environment and way of life. In Colorado, recognized him as their poet in 1974. Laureate he had 2 years prior to release the song Rocky Mountain High, perfectly encapsulated the sensation of waiting a lake among the Blue Mountains and taking in the peaceful woodland. The song turned into Colorado's unofficial anthem, was eventually one of its 2 official names' 2007 state songs. Denver's relationship felt genuine to the local population. Even legislators in West Virginia accepted his Country Roads, Take Me Home, as in 2014, one of their state songs, demonstrating how his music created vibrant images of locations in the United States. Denver was moreover a TV personality during the 1970s and 1980s, his special from 1975, and Spending a Night with John Denver, and even winning a Primetime Emmy Award. This was a significant honor and placed him with a few of the most renowned artists of the day. Denver made numerous TV appearances, specials as well. telling and singing his hit tales as well as acting alongside friends. These performances introduced his music to American living rooms and globally. Every look felt heartfelt and intimate, which made him among the most adored performers of his time. John Denver wasn't just amp. He appeared before the U.S. Congress in 1985. Senate. Parents had been advocating for cautionary labels on recordings they believe are overly direct. Although Denver was well known for his soft tunes, he said, he explained to them how his song Rocky previously, Mountain High, was censored. Since someone believed it to be about medications, that was untrue. Denver remained steadfast and composed while defending free expression. Many believed that someone like he would be in favor of the warning signs. However, he didn't. That instance altered the debate indefinitely. The music industry still feels the effects of today. In the same year, the first American performer to do so was Denver. To travel around the Soviet Union in more than nearest Cold War tensions were high. Tensions run high between the two nations. Denver made the decision to take action distinct. He performed at 11 different venues. The USSR. The journey was more than a music. It served as a link between cultures. Individuals in Leningrad, Moscow, and Tallinn gave him a hug. Even those who didn't understand his language brought a message of harmony. Denver performed a song about their hardships and his personal aspirations. It encouraged him to compose a brand new song called Let Us Start, with the decision to choose peace over conflict. This tour's recordings became his Live in the USSR as a well-known live album. In Denver returned to the Soviet Union in 1987. Union. Following the Chernobyl catastrophe, the nuclear accident had compelled 92,000 individuals to abandon their houses. Thousands were susceptible to sickness. Denver performed at a Moscow benefit concert. The program raised approximately $140,000. From only ticket sales, more arrived in via recordings. That evening wasn't related to politics, it concerned humanity and empathy. The Soviet Union viewers felt acknowledged. Denver demonstrated that a single guitarist could do something strong. Denver, in 1992, took his music to China. Following years of Chinese people were isolated, interested in him. Songs such as Country Parks already have songs about roads, as well as schools. The Chinese government tasked him to go on several city tours and, in fact, they consented to air one of his performances in front of almost 2 billion. Some proposed postponing the performance. At locations such as the Forbidden City, the Heavenly Temple, Chinese youth were welcomed, like a hero. Leaders like his Deng for years. Xiaoping had observed Denver when he was in Washington, D.C. previously. That visit had a profound effect. During his trip, Denver became one of the most famous Western performers in China during that time. As his career progressed, Denver centered more on assisting others. In the 1990s, he put out an album of his homegrown, is one of the best hits. Each and every penny was used to help those who were homeless. At this point, he also the World Hunger Project was co-founded. He was awarded the presidential The World Without Hunger Award. Denver was also engaged in environmental causes. The Winstar Foundation was established by him. Started the Planted 2000 initiative to repletwards. His charitable endeavors grew to be as much his music as a part of him. However, Denver had a difficult personal life. His union with Annie Martel started out as a dream. 2 children were adopted by them collectively. Even Annie's song was written by Denver. In 10 minutes for her. However, as their celebrity increased, so did their problems. Annie felt lost in his shadow a lot. By they chose to get a divorce in the early 1980s. Chaos ensued. Denver, typically quite kind in public, but behaved out privately. He reportedly became irate and erratic. In 1982, they got divorced, was depressed and resentful. After Annie one day destroyed a few of his prized oak trees Denver lost at their Aspen residence. Command. He arrived brandishing a chainsaw rather than shouting. He sliced their pieces of furniture. He even split their bed in 2. It was a sinister emblem regarding a divorced marriage. Witnesses and friends could think that this was the same kind singer. They were aware it had been Annie who had submitted a divorce petition in 1982. Though documents showed a pattern of mistreatment, though destroyed the clean image of Denver, companions support her account. Even his bad temper was mentioned by the manager. However, Annie remained quiet following their divorce. The harm had already been done. Numerous people who had become fond of Denver and started to perceive him in a distinct light. When John Denver first met Cassandra, an Australian singer and actress Delaney, at Sydney's Seabull in 1985 townhouse, she was taking part in Theatel Bar, and he was immediately captivated by her. Their romance progressed quickly. By August they enjoyed a lavish wedding in 1988 on above Aspen, a mountain. The scene was lovely, encircled by dear friends and relatives. For many it appeared to be affable. However, from the start, cracks were present. Later, Cassandra acknowledged the difficulties of having a famous man was enormous. John was 20 years old. Older, he was surrounded by fame, and he had erratic mood swings. What appeared flawless to the outside world and was already tense in a private setting. May 1989, Jessie, their daughter, was born. John Hoddleways believed he was incapable of having children due to a childhood ailment. The pregnancy was both a miracle and a surprise. For years, John had stated that Hugh was infertile, hence the birth of Jessie. Some questioned whether they had used IVF. After that, John started to become more possessive. Jessie was born. Cassandra saw him develop. Aloof and envious. The delicate equilibrium between them started to fall apart. By 1996, speaking to Australian Women's Weekly and presented a bleak image, she claimed that John had no true pals. Employees were fearful of him. Secretaries would weep and give up. What the majority perceived as his general picture was merely a performance. He was off-stage, frequently rude, erratic, and furious. Same on those closest to him. She showed years of mental suffering. John drank excessively, slapped her, and attempted to dominate every aspect of her life. She was quiet for a while, wishing to transform him. However, nothing worked. There was too much pressure. They split up and got divorced in 1991. Was completed by 1993. The court battle vicious. Cassandra was sued by John for $3.3 million and said she was being foolish of him. The custody battle Cassandra fought for Jessie. His memoirs, John wrote because she had degraded him during Thevely. They were both wounded by the fighting and John never quite recovered from that. The same 1994 saw the release of his Take Me Home. It broke his pristine image. He acknowledged that too much time spent struggling with weed, LSD as well as cocaine. These revelations startled his admirers. He was always viewed by them as a soft, natural-sounding vocalist. Currently they discovered the more sinister aspects of his life. Additionally, he wrote about infidelity on his spouses. Even his initial union with Annie Martell, who had served as an inspiration. Annie had a lot of affairs in her song. Readers were informed that he had been more physically fit than he ought to have been, and discussed violent episodes that ruined his second marriage. As well, on a narrative was noteworthy, with him utilizing a chainsaw to split their bed in two. Denver John was one of the most popular singers in America, songwriters in the 70s. He reached the top of the charts and earned millions of with his kind, sincere voice, both the acoustic tone and lyrics. RCA Records supported him for 25 albums, including 13 platinum and gold records, as well as his RCA's greatest hits albums selling LP ever. However, by the middle things started to alter in the 1980s. The latest slick synths dominated the 1980s. So on this scap, as well as drum machines, pop music fueled by MTV, Wash's rustic rural style everywhere felt uncomfortable. In 1986, following RCA General Electric purchased it, the business chose to focus and reduce expenses on more contemporary actions. In spite of his past with RCA and all of his prior accomplishments, they abandoned him. Denver was taken aback. He had recently finished his final album for them, One World, and considered a new agreement was certain. RCA instead made the decision they may earn more money in other places. He said. Claimed that they had assumed he was, particularly following years of his bringing they made a lot of money. Nowhere else to leave, he had to place his next released records under his own Windstar label. It provided a sobering reminder that even when styles change, a superstar may fall behind, and priorities shift. Meanwhile, Denver was dealing with other issues. One of his greatest talents was flying, passions over time. He recorded more than 2,700 flight hours and obtained evolutions for both single and multiple engineless gliders, Learjets, and even airplanes. However, his personal troubles started to catch up with him. Alongside him, Denver in the 1990s was detained for operating a vehicle in violation of influence-wise, actually the FAA, which mandates that pilots possess a valid medical certificate attesting to their fitness to fly, paid attention. Following his second, he was arrested for DUI and his medical certification. In the absence of it, his pilot's license was worthless. Regaining it would have needed to demonstrate that he no longer struggled with alcohol, yet had never finished that procedure. Flying hadn't brought him the most happiness, but now even he lost that. More concerning was his approach to the FAA's directives. He received certified letters from them requesting that he give up his medical certificate. He chose to disregard them or return them unopened. Months went by, such like this. Denver is soaring. Even despite this, he was no longer officially approved by declining to acknowledge that the Taurus he remained within the law. The FAA was unable to finish the revocation procedure until he agreed to their notification. Thus, in theory, he could continue to fly. However, this was not due to his physical fitness. It resulted from a flaw in the system that depended on his collaboration. That weakness hooted in March 1997, the FAA signed Denver to one of its certified letters, indicating that they could ground him formally. From that point on, all flights became unlawful. Restoring his status would entail demonstrating his sobriety and finishing off conditions he had disregarded for years. Denver decided against it. However, despite all, he continued to avoid this. He took action on October 12, 1997. His newly acquired lengthy, easy practice flights of experimental aircraft landings and departures close to Emterra, California. It was a little aircraft with significant changes. Denver was the owner of it for a single day and had only spent around a half hour with a check pilot prior to climbing by himself. The aircraft wazelted so significantly that it was challenging to take off the valve for the fuel selector. 4 was shifted 45 degrees and back, for instance, requiring him to squirm in his chair and extend behind his left shoulder. It was rigid and challenging to turn. Even pliers were required to move correctly. The gasoline readings are even worse, or also behind him. Thus, he had no means in order to read them without having to turn around and use a portable mirror. Even so, the gauges told him only imprecise non-linear assessments of what was still in the tank. An interpretation of 1/4 full indicated that there was in fact a 26-gallon has fewer than 5 gallons remaining tank at the Terry Peninsula. That morning, Denver's airport ran the left tank dry. While rehearsing landings and takeoffs after hearing the engine splutter, witnessed desk go silent once the gasoline was depleted. Denver turned to the right and twisted about tank. To accomplish it, he needed to get there behind him without seeing and used pliers to rotate the selection. While doing so, Hep rose to the right rudder by mistake. Pedal. The long easy nosed down sharply, and in a matter of seconds, it dove into the Pacific Ocean. Denver died. Immediately, investigators from the Board for National Transportation Safety found that Denver had also minimal fuel to start. Roughly 3.1 tank holds gallons, and there are 6 in Theother, as well as that his lack of knowledge of one of the main causes was the plane. Additionally, they mentioned the dangerous design changes that made switching very impossible. Gasoline, when in flight. Despite the fact that he was an unskilled pilot, he had an appropriate liability to meet the demands of this aircraft. The NTSB's report was unambiguous. This collision might have been prevented had Denver fueled received more intensive training or had an easier-to-use fuel system control. The mishap would never have occurred. His last flight turned into a tragic lesson about how choices and small details can add up to a terrible conclusion.